Alright guys, TacticalRab here again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Way back in November, December of last year, the question was being raised, would the gentlemen's agreements being decided by the pro players actually be upheld towards the end of the season? On the majority, yes, there have been gentlemen's agreements broken. Smokes used, snakings happen, potentially auto tactical sprint as well. But in general, the pros have been relatively good sticking to the GAs from the start of the season to now. But with the World Championship just around the corner, is that going to maintain for too much longer? Some speculation here between Scrappy, between Sib and between Dashy, that potentially Cellium is using single tap to sprint to gain something of a competitive advantage. If this is true, if this remains true, going into the World Championship, does it give FaZe an edge? Is it considered cheating, technically, by the other players? Is this even true? Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Just an interesting thing I noticed here that there's, I'm Source Gardener here putting together. For this tournament they're trying to put together with an NFL captain, a COD pro, and then a creator. So and actually Doug is in the replies saying, hey, I'm the creator, right? Obviously, there's always questions about whether a former COD pro should be considered a creator because, Scump is a creator, right? Rather than a pro, technically, and then put Snoopy in as the pro. So I guess this makes sense for Doug to say this just because Snoopy is literally the only contracted player that they still have on the Boston team. But I still thought the fact that Doug was, mentioning himself and Snoopy, maybe there was something in that given the recent decisions we've seen at our Boston camp, of course. Just quickly for Marky as well, because lots of talk about what's going to happen for the World Cup, right? Because, he's obviously staying at home and watching the event here from afar, but obviously been working with the guys that they're sending out there to try and, win the Challengers World Championship. And as he says, after EWC, we're looking to a return to the CDL. So wishing the best of Marky, great guy. But EWC has still been raising some serious questions over the last few days, such as from Clayster. How are the other 4 spots determined for the Esports World Cup? And as Soja, like it says, online FaZe qualifier per region, right? So I'm guessing all the regions, so Europe, Middle East and Africa, North America, Latin America, and I guess like APAC, they're going to have their own online FaZe qualifiers, and the winner of that is going to qualify for the tournament. So as I said earlier today, I'm sure that the Saudis probably want Team Falcons to be there, and they currently have a good team in EMEA, and potentially the best team. But, and also I suppose, if at least one of the CDL franchises doesn't accept the invite, which maybe is possible, who knows, then maybe they just say, alright Falcons, you're coming in instead. Not sure that's the most competitive integrity, but it might be something they consider, right? So that's what Clay's wondering. That, okay, if he doesn't get signed to a CDL team that's going to be attending, which is probably unlikely to happen, right? I mean, he's been dropped by Ravens. Obviously, Boston have some opportunities open, but if they're not interested in Clay, then he's not going to get signed in the next couple of weeks for the Esports World Cup in the middle of August. So, what are the other options, right? Okay, Vegas, okay, Minnesota Rocker, the other teams that didn't make it. But the other option is, okay, if I'm Clay, how about I try and play in this FaZe qualifier, right? So, like, would somebody down in Challengers let me play in their team? Probably yes. And if I win it, then I get to go play at the World Cup. So, I think that might be the plan for some of these pros, is that they might say, okay, you know what, let's just form teams in Challengers if we can, or at least try and get signed to teams in Challengers, or just join forces with them to try and make it to the World Cup, and I'm sure that must be on the agenda for some of these guys as it stands. But speaking of Ravens quickly, this was noted as well that Rogue, so the ownership situation of Ravens is always incredibly complicated. It was London Ravens, and it was Rekt Global, but then Rekt Global were like bought out by this metaverse company called Infinite Reality to the tune of like $1 billion or something, which was all just fake money in the first place, and there was never actually real money involved. It was just, share options or whatever worth that price. None of the money was ever real. And then they have like Rogue as well under their heading, but Rogue are considering selling their LEC spot apparently to in League of Legends. So definitely an interesting thing if this is true, that the organisation might just be, going bust and running out of cash basically. And if that applies to the COD stuff as well, which let's be real, it probably does, because they tried to host an event this year, and, it never happened, did it, right? Because the CDL had to take over, they had to step in and move it to Burbank just because the Ravens boys just could not put together a functional event. I think the guys that were working on producing the event at Major 4 that was meant to be in Charlotte, like, there was conversations that we were having with those guys, and then all of a sudden they were just, like, no longer with the organization, right? Like, the organization just, I think, made some hirings and firings, and basically just incapacitated themselves from actually running the event. So I don't know if that was intentional or not, but sensational work, as always, from that organization, and as a result, there's been lots of talk about whether, okay, is it about time we see some other organization come through and actually just take over the Ravens, because I would not rule that out as it presently stands. But let's dive into this gentleman's agreement stuff, right? Because it's been a big talking point really since the start of the season. We've always talked about it even for the last couple of years on the snaking situation, the snaking dilemma, when, okay, if you guys aren't familiar with snaking, you go up and down, just about go prone, sprint forwards, and you can bounce up and down behind a car, behind a piece of cover, whatever. We saw players doing it this season. We've seen players doing it way worse in recent seasons. Thankfully, the pros' gentleman's agreements have been relatively well upheld. The big talking point of January, February, March was Seattle Surge, right? The team that kept getting blacklisted from practice because they could not help themselves breaking every GA under the sun. You know, they were doing all sorts of stuff. They were using auto tactical sprint, apparently. We'll get into that in a second. They were using 2 different smoke grenades. They were snaking potentially at times. Even when Illy was on the team, they were stair glitching, right? That was the thing with Illy, wasn't it? In that fountain on, when it was on Karachi, right? On the bottom of the Churchill, when that used to be a thing. That was a talking point, and you know, Surge got blacklisted from scrims, and all the rest, of course, is history since then. However, generally, the players have been quite good at upholding their own GAs and saying, okay, gentlemen's agreements, basically the idea is that the players will agree together to say we're not going to do a certain thing which is allowed in the official CDL rule set. Like, the CDL rule set can never ban snaking. It could ban single tap to sprint, and we'll see that in a second, but they don't. It's allowed to be used because, you know, anyone at home can use it, and honestly, I think many would recommend it just to maintain your thumbs and your thumbsticks on the controller, rather than working through to the pro specifications. But the idea is that for the players, it's more efficient in some ways to actually not use this, just because it ensures a higher skill gap. The players that are really good can double tap the left stick and then do everything else better than the players that can't do that. I personally think that's quite marginal, really, and I wouldn't mind seeing the players use this, but whatever. The players have agreed. No snaking, no cheese, no sound equalization as well was a big one, and maybe people are using sound EQ anyway, but on LAN, that is officially restricted by the CDL. Online, they say, whatever, fair game, guys. What they were not doing, the CDL, though, was mandating or monitoring the use of, no tactical sprint options, single or automatic tactical sprint. It had to be the double, the standard option. But the pros at Major 4 apparently came up with their own solution here, and they said, look, all teams have agreed to random settings checks at Major 4 to make sure no one is using it. And I guess these settings checks were carried out by the players or by the CDL or something, and it was all okay, and nobody was caught cheating. However, there was this clip that came out over the last couple of days with Scrappy, Dashy, and Sib all discussing players that might potentially be using single tap to sprint, and they reckon that Cellium is potentially a bit suspect.
Wait, you think so single tap?
Who?
So?
No, I don't know.
I gotta see
Probably.
his left stick though. He probably is using the same left stick for like 800 years. The same yellow dome stick.
Cell is sus. I'll say that. Cell sus. Definitely sus. But I don't really give a fuck, bro. Run it or not. You guys are all ass.
Dude, that's what I thought too. Like,
I don't give a fuck. Bro, just run it.
And then everyone that I've invested.
Just run it. Who gives a?
I mean, who else do you think runs it?
You.
Me, I definitely don't run it. That's insane. That's insane. I would pull this shit on right now. That's insane.
Your movement's leveled up over the year.
Nah, you're sus. You're sus.
You're
You're definitely
too good, actually. Wait a
definitely
second,
sus.
you are tough.
You're definitely sus.
I give the subs benefit of the doubt. Fuck it.
Yeah, the subs are cracked.
The subs like someone.
Someone's moving better than me what they are. I'm like,
Nah, like Abe, I remember once. I remember last year I thought like maybe Abe was sus, and then he pulled it up, and I was like, he's just him. With the left, he's just him with the left stick. I promise.
So Cellium, of course, always considered like, King Cobra, right, the chief of the snakes or whatever you want to say over the last several years. And like Cell made some comments on this back in December when it was a big talking point at the time. And to be fair to Cell, generally, apart from a couple of instances, he's been pretty good sticking to the gentleman's agreement. So, do we think that Scrap, Dashy, and obviously Scrappy especially says that, yeah, probably somebody is doing it? Do they have a point? Is there anything actually going on here? Is Cellium part of the situation that they find themselves in or not? That is definitely a question as it stands. But even if Cellium is, totally clean and playing by the rules, which I think is probably the more likely situation here, is there any other players that are going to try something, right? Because it was always going to be a talking point. It even happened for like the Subliners, wasn't it? When Skyz did a little bit of snaking in an online match way back during, I think it was even the Major 1 qualifiers or whatever. And you tend to see this when you go to LAN, it's more likely that someone's going to decide, okay, maybe if I just do this, do that, it'll be, you know, I'll get away with it type thing. And, you know, oh, apologies, guys, my bad. I didn't mean to, like, I really didn't mean to lay down this head glitch and got a 2-piece from it. And often, maybe they potentially did. So that is the point that is being made, is that whether these players are going to do things intentionally, but not apparently intentionally at the World Championship. Because when there's, you know, $2 million on the line, or when there's $1.8 million on the line of the Esports World Cup, it opens the door to say, you know what, if I can use something to gain a competitive advantage, which isn't officially banned in the rule set, i.e. if the CDL finds out I'm doing it, or if I just do it blatantly, I'm not going to get punished by the league and not going to get forfeited the series or anything, then it's obviously going to be tempting to do with serious bread on the line. So that is the debate here that the pros have to figure out. I guess my question really is, are they going to be able to, the pros, do the same thing as they did during Major 4? Like, are they going to be able to say to the CDL, okay, at Champs, we want to do these random settings checks again, like we potentially did ourselves back at Major 4? I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen, to be honest. And if it doesn't, then you've got to wonder whether players, certain players, might try and get away with it, right? But into your thoughts in the comments below. A couple of things to close out with. Firstly here, Rookie of the Year nominees. 2 of them, again, are from the Seattle Surge. I think it's quite clearly this year going to be Gwyn, Estriel, and then aBeZy and 04. I think 04 could definitely have taken it if he was around for a bit longer, right? Really good search and destroy player. I think he's going to be a staple from the league or for the league for a little bit of time to come now. But, you know, Estriel is... I would say Estriel is probably the favourite to win it as it stands, just based on the fact that, you know, his LAN placings, what that Gorillas team ended up doing, and, you know, him being probably the best player on that team, to be fair, over the course of the year, I would say. Gwyn, that also applies to though for Ravens. Obviously, they didn't have the best results they wanted at the end of the season, and his LAN performances generally weren't quite good enough. And aBeZy was great when he was on his own role, but that wasn't the case the entire time, so difficult to again judge his entire season. I think, you know, some comments deserving for Seattle, just because, again, they've put together a couple of players that are showing some impressive form. I mean, 2 years ago in Vanguard, they also had 2 Rookie of the Year nominees in Pred and Sib, right? I mean, they were both 2 players that had just come in for the first time, and obviously they made waves that year. So, look, Surge have not made good roster decisions, as we full well know, over the last several years. The Pred sale to OpTic was an absolute incredible blunder, and certainly I feel that way looking back at it in hindsight, and probably they do as well. But nonetheless, they have at least made some respectable decisions, and I feel like this Rambo pickup in hindsight has worked out really rather well. But very much into your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Congrats to Krim, by the way, for another award. He won a Hall of Fame award at some of this, the Esports Trade Association, and you've got to say, Krim obviously has got in good shape for himself for the racing stuff, and like, this guy's looking like an absolute $1 million. But very much into your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
Show Ray was good, Colin.
Ray.
You check.
Motherfucker sitting corners?
Oh shit! Oh,
Colin, Colin.
You run that shit.
Run his world. A
Bullets, by
bullets.
the way. No, bro. If he has a sub, you actually shit on there. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah, he said this thing, Gordon.
Holy fuck. D40, bro.